Welcome to episode 123 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing screenwriter and director Anders Thomas Jensen, who recently wrote and directed the Danish film Men and Chickens. For much of his career, he has worked as a writer where other people direct his material, so he has a really interesting perspective as both a screenwriter and a writer-director. So stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any website links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 123. I just want to mention a free webinar that I'm doing on Wednesday, June 8th at 10 a.m. It's called How to Effectively Market Your Screenplay and Sell It. I'm going to go through all the various online channels that are available to screenwriters and give you my unfiltered opinion of them. I get questions all the time like, does the blacklist work, or does Inktip work, or which screenwriting contests should I enter? I've tried pretty much every marketing channel available to screenwriters, and I'm going to share my experiences with them in this webinar. Again, the webinar is completely free. Don't worry if you can't make it to the live event. I will be recording this. So if you sign up, you'll get a link to the recorded event after it happens. To sign up, just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. Again, that's www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. And then the word free webinar is all lowercase and all one word. It's just sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. Also, if you're already on my email list, if I already send you emails, you do not need to register. Anybody who's already on my email list, I will be sending out the link so that they can attend, and I will be sending out the recorded link as well. So you don't need to re-sign up to an email list to get this. If you're on my email list, I'll be sending out all that information. So a quick few words about what I'm working on. Once again, the main thing I'm doing is pre-production for my crime action thriller screenplay, The Pinch. Production, again, is scheduled for July, to start July 9th, so we'll be shooting pretty much all through July. Slowly but surely, I am putting the pieces together for The Pinch. I've been meeting with a bunch of people, getting crew positions filled. I'm going to start into the casting probably in the next week or two as well. I did post a casting notice on the breakdown services and have gotten, hundreds and hundreds of people responding to those. So I've got to start going through those and scheduling some casting sessions. One interesting thing that I thought was worth mentioning was to fill these crew positions, I've been posting a lot of ads on Craigslist, and I'm amazed at how many experienced, talented people are responding to my ads. I've just been putting up ads for pretty much all the crew positions, and, lots and lots of really experienced, talented, seemingly nice people have been responding. And a lot of those are the people that I've just been trying to meet with, talk to, and kind of see what level of commitment they can give to this project. Many of the positions, some of them I'm giving a little bit of money to. Most of them I'm not giving any money to. They're just unpaid positions. And again, I'm just amazed at how many good people are responding. But what's even more amazing, and this is the part that I thought was interesting, was worth mentioning, was how many people respond with ridiculously bad cover letters. And when I say a cover letter, essentially an ad on Craigslist goes up and then they send you an email, and they can make attachments. They can attach their resume. They can attach, they can certainly put in their IMDb link. They can put in links to their reel if they're doing something that, I could see on video. If it's an actor, if it's a, an AD, they might have some footage or something. So what's amazing to me, so that's all great stuff, and I appreciate that, especially the IMDb links. I'm used to looking at those, so I can look at those quickly and kind of see what kind of experience the person really has. So, but what amazes me is people just send me these ridiculously bad cover letters where they'll just be something to the effect of, is this position still available? They won't send a resume. They don't say anything about themselves, literally just an email, uncapitalized, no punctuation. Is this position still available? And I'm not sure what kind of a response they want from me. I've also gotten a few where people list all sorts of strange demands, how long are you going to be shooting? Are there any special effects? Are there any stunts? I mean, they just ask a whole bunch of questions. They have all kinds of crazy, as I said, some of these positions are unpaid. So they want like the first money in. They want to make sure that they get compensated before all the rest of the crew who is also working for deferred pay. All sorts of just crazy demands, which, obviously I'm not going to necessarily even respond to. And the reason I thought this was worth mentioning on my screenwriting podcast is that I've talked to a few producers over the years, and they tell me that the same thing happens from screenwriters. They'll post ads looking for screenplays or looking for screenwriters on services like my own Selling Your Screenplay, where I have a service that sends out leads to screenwriters. Producers will use services like that, and they will get a bunch of these really half-baked responses back. People just responding, "Hey, is this position filled? Hey, is this real? Is this a real job? Hey, are you for real?" Those will be the sorts of responses. And again, I don't think people realize how competitive this industry is. I mean, when I'm putting up an ad on Craigslist, I'm getting dozens and dozens of responses from all of these positions. And put yourself in my shoes, put yourself in the producer's shoes. What are you going to respond how are you going to respond when you've got lots of people responding in a professional, appropriate manner? How are you going to respond to these sort of inappropriate, ridiculously silly emails that you get? You're just going to delete them if you were me. And that's what I'm doing. And that's what these producers are doing. So I would really urge people, when they're going to make a submission, there's literally no point to making a half-baked submission. It's just going to get deleted, and that's going to be the end of it. So whatever time it takes you even to write that half-baked submission is not even worth it. It's a waste of time. So if it's worth submitting and you're going to spend time submitting to someone, think through your cover letter a little bit. I highly encourage people not to just, especially when someone is looking for someone, like there's a lead from a producer looking for a specific script or a specific type of screenwriter, take some time to actually customize your query letter. Again, I can tell from these Craigslist posts when I put up a crew position, I'll say like some very specific things in my ad, and then I'll get these sort of form letters back. And yes, sometimes these people have experience or not experience, but I was looking for a sound mixer, and I understand, this is a good example. I understand that, ultimately I'm going to have to probably pay a little bit of money for a sound mixer. I want to make sure my sound is professional. I probably am not going to be able to get that position for free. So that's one of the positions that's going to actually require a little bit of money. And again, I just get these form letters, and in my ad to Craigslist, I'm specifically saying, what is your rate? How much would you charge? It's a 15-day shoot. It's in July. And people just send these form letters. Here's my equipment. Here's my link to my IMDb page. And again, those are reasonably professional, and I probably will look at those a little bit, but you might as well cut to the chase. If somebody in the ad is looking for something specific, address that. Talk about that up front. And if someone is saying, how much would you charge me to write this script? I have a comic book that I want turned into a screenplay. How much would you charge? Answer that question. At least try to answer it. Don't just send a form letter. Because again, I'm getting tons. The sound mixer position is a real good example, because it is going to be potentially a paid position. And again, when I say paid, we're talking about, well less than $100 a day. So it's not going to be a lot of money, but there will be some money for the sound mixer. And when I put an ad up on Craigslist and there's a paid position, I probably have, 50, 60, 70 people responding to it. So, who are the people that I'm going to go through and look at? The people that say, this is my daily rate and I can actually afford those daily rate. The people that are addressing it. I mean, some of the people just responded, hey, my daily rate is negotiable. I'm indie friendly. I'll work with your budget. Those are the kinds of responses that I'm checking those emails and putting a little star on those emails. And those are the ones I'm going to go back to. If you don't address what's in the query letter, and the producer has hundreds and hundreds of submissions, those are the ones he's just going to exclude. He's just going to delete. He's going to just maybe gloss over them and say, oh, I'll get back to that one later. And then he just won't go back to it, because there'll be enough other good emails from people that actually do respond to what he's actually looking for. Anyways, that's maybe a long-winded explanation of what I'm working on, but let's move on now to the main segment. Today, I'm interviewing screenwriter and director Anders Thomas Jensen. Here is the interview. Welcome, Anders, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So to start out, maybe we can just talk about your early career, kind of how you got into the business, and maybe walk us through that first actual job in the business, and we can kind of talk about how you actually landed that job.
Well, I was very young. I always did films. I wrote and directed in high school, and when I started university, I did a screenplay, and this was in Denmark, in Copenhagen, so I sent it out to 3 producers, and I never heard from 2 of them, and just one came back and said, he basically said, this is shit, but I can see you can write, so I'm going to give you an offer here. And he was like a known producer. He'd done a lot of films, so I took the offer, and I started doing shorts. I did a lot of shorts, like 10 minutes to 30 minutes. And in Denmark we have there's a subsidy system, so you can actually get money to develop these shorts. And I did actually the first one I did was nominated for an Academy Award, and then from there it went very fast. So my first, and next year I had my first like feature film assignment. So I applied for film school, so I never had any training in. I think I did like 10 or 12 feature films before I even knew what I was doing.
But in college, it sounds like you were
I were, but I never studied, like I never went to a school to learn script writing, or so it was more
film production.
But I did work. But I always sound like it sounds like I'm just copying Tarantino's story. But I did work 10 years in a video store, and I saw more films than most people, and more bad films, there's actually a clear point. There's a good point in that, because you really learn a lot from seeing bad films, because you can see what you're not supposed to do. So my film school was just watching films, and then later on, after I've done a lot of films, I sort of got into the more, like, how do you say, the knowing what's being, how do you, I'm sorry, I'm just a word. I have a block. The more analyzing part of, let's say, I mean, so I mean, not just doing it, but knowing what you're doing. So that's my story.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those early query letters. First off, how did you find these 3 producers to even send that letter to? What was that process like?
Yeah, but that was just like it's a very small community in Denmark, and it's like it's like the 3 studios here. I mean, like the studios here. There's like this. At that point, there were like 3 studios or 3 well-known producers. So it was they're in the media, and it's just if you want to make films, those are the guys some big guys with cigars and stuff.
So then let's talk about just what was in that actual query letter pitch that you sent to the producers. Maybe just give us a couple tips for people that are starting out and they want to send that original, fresh first letter to somebody. What was your first letter like that actually worked? I mean, 1 out of 3 is actually a pretty good percentage.
Yeah, it was. It was.
So maybe there's some tips there.
Well, I mean, I didn't put much of a letter. I was very naive. I said, listen, I did a script. I want to do films. This is my script. Read it, and it wasn't a really good script, I have to admit.
It was a feature, or was it a short?
It was a feature. Okay. But it basically, I mean, it was. I don't know. I think I might have been lucky also, and you need that too. But what I learned on like quite fast was how much you learn from actually getting your stuff done. It doesn't matter if it's like like amateur production. I mean, just seeing it on screen is really, really where you learn something, because it's. I remember when I was very young, I had this idea that a script was like a final work of art, which it isn't. It's like a working tool, and you have to remember that. So I think I learned where I learned the most was those years where I got some stuff done and suddenly could see what is working, what is not. That's where you really learn something, I think, anyway.
Yeah. So let's talk about those short films that you did early in your career. In Denmark, is there some sort of a system so you get some sort of a stipend, like you have some living expenses, some production budget? Were you just doing these on your own dime? Kind of, let me talk through that process a little bit.
The first one, I actually couldn't get any funding because nobody knew. So we did that like friends, and I mean, And I knew a guy who knew an actor, and we convinced him. And we had him for like 4 hours. We had to shoot. It was horrible, but we did. We managed to do a 12-minute film, and. The next one, I mean, then you could get funding, but it's like low funding. You could get but still you get like $20,000-$30,000 to do a short from the government, which is a great system because it really develops talent. So that's how it works there.
Okay. And then getting into this government system where you get this $20,000-$30,000, how do you go about getting in that? Was that your relationship with this producer who answered that first query letter? He was able to get you in. You
but that's actually everybody can apply.
Okay.
That's the. But I mean, you have to know how to, because of course they get like a lot of applications. So you have to have done something.
Mm-hmm. And this initial short film.
That was my
Okay. So let's dig into Men and Chicken. Maybe to start out, you can just give us a quick log line or pitch of the film, just for people if they haven't seen it yet.
Well, that's the impossible thing with this. If I could, that it's very hard to do. But it's basically it's a film about 5 brothers who. It's a film about 5 brothers who have to learn how to live together. Who they haven't been given anything on forehand. I mean, they were deserted on this island and had to find their own rules and create their own civilization and find out how to survive themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so where did this idea come from? What was sort of the seed of this idea?
Well, it was since my last film, Adam's Apples. I had 4 kids, and I took like a break of 10 years where I only did screenplays. I didn't direct, and it was watching those kids. It was. I
have a 6-year-old, and watching the movie, I got that too. It's like, geez, these people are acting like 6-year-olds.
But they are, and I mean, the scene where they are fighting over the plates, I literally lifted it out of my living room. I hardly changed any dialogue, and no, but it was really sitting there one night and thinking this huge responsibility, and thinking how stupid are people. I mean. Humans are, we don't know anything. We have to learn everything from scratch every time. We're so dependent on each other. And I mean, and just seeing how, if you have 4 kids, they will fight. They will fight, keep on fighting until you learn them not to fight. And they will keep on. I mean, there's so many edges you have to brush off on humans. And I sat down one night and I just had this idea. I said, what if I just took them and left them in a deserted island? What would happen? And that's the good thing about being a screenwriter, because then you can actually do a film about it and not do it in real life. So that's what I did. I just started writing that.
So then when did it sort of morph into this sci-fi angle? And I don't want to give away spoilers or something, but there's definitely kind of a sci-fi angle that you delve into. And where did that, in the process of writing this, you start out with your 4 kids, and what if adults were acting like these 5-year-olds? And then where did you make that leap? Well,
it was in there because. Sci-fi, it is sci-fi but it's much about gene technology and it's it came naturally to the story, and I have this because I do so many scripts that I like clear genre scripts for other directors. So when I'm doing something myself, I really like this mixture of genres. I know distributors hate it because it's very hard to sell a film if you can't put a label on it. But I love films myself that surprises me. Where I hate knowing that it's. I mean, of course, I like to see a good Western or it's a really well made. But I really like films that play with genres. So. I also, since the very first film I did, I knew that I like to move around in genres. So it was only, it was only natural to take it out there, for me.
And so let's talk about that. One of my focuses on this podcast is trying to help screenwriters sell the material and make that first sale. And so this is, as you just kind of pointed out, it's not an easy film to define. I can see distributors being a little hesitant on it. How much of that plays into your writing process? Is that in the back of your mind when you're writing this? Well, what am I actually going to do with it? How am I going to get this produced? Yeah, but in a sense, much more with this, because this was the opposite. This film was actually the first time where I said, I'm not going to think at all about how to sell it. I'm just going to, I want to do this film. I want to do a film that is exactly like I want to do it. And then I met the wall of, this film would never, it would never have been done if it weren't for my previous work, and if
I had the cast. You know, that Mads Mikkelsen is a huge star in Europe and Denmark. So that sort of, to be honest, I mean, a lot of distributors and co-financiers, they were like, what? When they had the script, they said this is never going to work because, but they went along with it, you know, on the body of work I had and because of the cast. So this film is actually it's an awful example to talk about in that sense. But it's good because it's you can use it to say that this time I did this. Normally I remember with my first film I was. And also when I worked a lot of times with directors who are doing their first film, and they a lot of times you want to do everything, and you want to. It's very, very good to be clear about your genre, to be, for instance, and to have perhaps do a smaller story that is. I mean, you can start out by doing a sci-fi film that you know the budget is going to be $200 million. That's probably not going to be honest. Perhaps you're a genius and perhaps you'll get lucky, but try to do the small confined character dramas and make that work. That's anyway. I mean, that's what I always try to say to the director when I start doing a project, because it's as I said, it's only fun to do scripts if they get made, for me anyway. I mean, I think that's where it all happens. So I'm very, very aware of. Is this a realistic idea? Is this something that would happen? And again, with the language, I mean, if you do most Danish films will never surpass $12-15 million. That's not even. Sorry, they will never surpass $8-10 million in budget. So you can see, to do a huge sci-fi film, it hasn't happened yet, but to do that will probably not be the wisest choice.
Yeah. So let's talk about your writing process a little bit, and we can talk specifically about Men and Chicken, but just in general on other screenplays. What does your process look like? I'm always curious, how much time do you spend outlining before you actually open up final draft and start writing the script? So maybe let's start there. How much time do you spend just literally with index cards or outline, and what do you use? Do you use index cards, outline?
I put it in two categories. I say, I mean, if you have like the plot-driven movies, I spend a lot of time and almost do like a very thorough outline before I start writing anything. With character, like the films I did with Susanne Bier, I have almost no outline. I have like three lines about where the story could go, but then I have a lot of discussions about the characters, and then basically I start writing and doing drafts to find the characters and the story. So I sort of go along with it. It's much more work than if you have a suitcase full of dollars in scene one. But it's also very satisfying to do it, even though you might end up doing like, I don't know, 800,000 pages of script in the end. It's that's a bit exaggerated. But sometimes you do a lot of drafts. For me, that works when you do characters, because I think it's very, very difficult. You tend to, if you try to figure out the whole, if you try to do this really thorough structure on a character drama, it tends to, sometimes it can become mechanic, I think. So I like to keep a lot of stuff open there and then just do the more writing. The opposite on. If it's a plot-driven film, I like to have everything down before doing a word, so you don't have to go back and rewrite that much.
Yeah. So what does a writing day look like for you? How many hours a day do you actually spend writing, and how many pages? What's a good day for you in terms of just page count?
Well, I mean, it's very much like this, because it's I'll do like 2 months where I'm structuring. I'll do a month where I'm thinking. But I always do this, that when I do my first draft, I go away to a hotel or a house, and I did that before.
Without your family is the idea.
And I did that before I had kids. And sometimes I do it with the director. Sometimes I bring my kids, but it just is to be where everybody knows you're not available, and I love these hotel resorts because after one day you're so bored that you will actually just start working. So I will do that, and it all depends. I can do a first draft in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I can do it in, sometimes it's a month, but it's that's the time frame of it.
Okay. And then let's talk about just the development. So once, and again, we can be specific with Men and Chicken. So you have your draft done. What was the next step once you had that first draft? What is your development process? Do you have friends? Sounds like you have relationships with actors. Do you start to send it out to them, get notes, do rewriting? Maybe talk about that process a little bit.
Well, the first persons I will do a flash draft where I sort of get the structure, the story, the structure, and the basic outlines of the characters, because I know these guys. And I know who's going to play it when I'm directing myself. I will first get on. Actually, the production designer is very early, and then the leading characters. And that's my producer has it, but we didn't send it out to anyone yet.
But even just the development, did your producer give you notes? Like, do you get notes from anybody? This was just purely in a...
this is very early stage, because this is that's where it starts. I do this. I would bother my wife with telling the story, and then I have a couple of other directors and screenwriters, but that's later on. Here it's just... I love to get the characters on board this early, the actors or any actors, just to do readings, just to get some feedback on the characters. Once that's done, I have like the same people I've been using since I started, which are other directors and screenwriters. So I think I have 4 or 5 that I really. It's a difficult job to read somebody else's stuff, because you tend to put yourself in there, and it's very difficult to be objective and see, okay, this is the movie he's gonna make, so I'm gonna give notes from that. But I have like 4 or 5 people that will do that to me, and I listen a lot to them.
Okay. Let's talk about getting on cast. It sounds like in this case you had some relationships with this cast, but was that you had a producer you just mentioned, so you sent the script to him, then you start getting the cast. Let's talk first actually about the producer. How did you meet that producer? That's someone you've known your whole career?
That was the
first guy you sent the query letter to? Okay,
I did 3 shorts and 4 features as a director with him.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then let's talk about some of the cast. How did you go about getting the cast on board?
Well, I've had the same cast in the last 5, almost. So it's a very. We sort of lean on the stuff we've done together, and we're always looking forward to do something together again. So it's a very special relationship we have in comparison to when I work with other directors. But I do always. We try always to. I know it's more difficult here in the system here, but. All the good films I've done, where we've had like a lot of rehearsals with the actors, like readings and before, and being able to doing rewrites after the actors had like chipped in. So but I know how difficult it is here, because people are attached it's not doable here in the same way, but it's. I think like Woody Allen, I think he does it a lot.
I've heard a lot of his films are now funded in Europe, so...
But it's really, really, it gives so much to the film to be able to do that. So, but that's, yeah.
So then let's just talk briefly about that. Okay, so you've got the actors, you've got your producers. What were the steps to actually raise money, and was that a long process, a slow process? It went pretty fast,
but I'm not part of that, actually. I know it sounds. I give it to my producer and I ask him, can you raise the money for this? And he'll either say it's too expensive, rewrite, or he'll say I'll try. And he said I'll try, and he did it in this case. And but sometimes, of course, he'll come back and say, listen, we can't get more than that. You have to. Can we find a way to make it work? And normally, you can always make it work. You can always rethink and do some rewrites, I think.
So how many scripts over the years would you say fall into that category where it sounds like this one, he read it and whatever budget you proposed, he said, yeah, I can raise that much money.
Yeah.
How many scripts were there that you send to him like that? Like just on a percentage basis, you know, half the ones you send him, he's like, yeah, we've got to lower the budget, you've got to make some modifications.
For all the scripts, I think there's always like the last, like just before it starts, when you think you have everything, then there's always the last rewrite where you discover you haven't got enough money. That's almost on every film I've done, where it's like, okay, we're set, we're good to go, and then a month before, it's like, so some of the finance fell off. I mean, there's always this rewrite in the end. Yeah.
Let's talk a minute about working with other directors and obviously inside the studio system, even the other producers and people giving you notes. Especially as a director, I'm just curious to kind of hear what your opinion is of that process. Is it painful for you to watch other directors direct your material when you know you're a director as yourself? And just how do you handle that process? Because there's going to be lots of screenwriters that go through this.
Well, it's I think that it's really, really a good idea to try to direct something yourself, because you discover how difficult it is. Because I remember the first times I saw my screenplays and I thought, what did they do? and it was like, but when you go out and see how hard it is to direct and how many voices and how, I mean, you're confined in so many ways, you sort of get, you have more respect for, you can see why it sometimes goes as it goes. But I mean, on the other hand, I also tried, I mean, I know it's like a cliche that the writer should be angry, but many times I think it's like 50-50 where I've been surprised and thought, wow, that scene, they really added a lot of stuff to it that I didn't see in there. So it's sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not that good.
That's very encouraging to hear. So let's talk about this. I always like to throw this to screenwriters. How do you handle notes that you, from development people, from directors, whoever, maybe even actors, that you just know are totally ridiculous? How do you handle those notes just professionally and just on your psyche? You know, just going in and having to write pages that you feel are never going to work.
Yeah, but it's very difficult.
Okay.
And it's the worst. And it takes, you can almost do a whole script at the time it takes to do 2 scenes that you don't want to do, because it's so painful to do. I mean,
how do you pump yourself up?
Yeah, but you learn more and more to take the discussions and try to make your arguments, but of course sometimes you and again you also have to be sure to, I mean, as long as there's something in there that where you think, you try to find that thing where you say, okay, there might actually be an idea in this, because then it's actually doable. Then you can try to sort of seek out, okay, is there something about it? But of course there are some times where it's just ludicrous, and that's, I mean, you have to take the fight. You have to try to take the fight. But of course sometimes you're still sent home to do it. But you should go a long way to take the fight.
Yeah.
Do some, even though you've left the office, do some emails and try to. But I mean, I haven't tried it where it was like the Hollywood cliche. I think people are reasonable. If you can, I mean, it's a conversation. If you can put out an argument that is strong enough, people will listen. But I'm sure you could also work with. I have heard stories.
Yeah.
Sure, you could end up with somebody that would not. And I don't know what to do except get out of there. Keep working or just get out of there fast.
Yeah. So how can people see Men in Chicken? Do you know the release schedule is going to be in theaters, video on demand?
Nope. I know it's opening here in 10 days. But I don't know the.
Okay.
No.
No problem. And I always like to just wrap up the interviews, ask my guests if you have a Twitter account or a Facebook, a blog, anything you feel comfortable sharing, just so people can kind of follow along and maybe learn more about you.
I have nothing.
You have no Twitter?
I'm not on Facebook. No, I'm sorry.
No problem at all. So no problem at all. So, well, Anders, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I really enjoyed the movie, and I wish you a lot of luck with it.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to mention 2 things I'm doing at Selling Your Screenplay to help screenwriters find producers who are looking for material. First, I've created a monthly newsletter that will be sent directly to producers. Every member of SYS Select can submit 1 logline per newsletter. I went and emailed my large database of producers and asked them if they would like to receive this monthly newsletter of pitches. So far, I have well over 300 producers have signed up to receive it. These producers are hungry for material and happy to read scripts from new writers. And secondly, I've partnered with one of the premier paid screenwriting leads services so I can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are lots of great paid leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, I've been getting 10 to 12 high-quality paid leads per week. These are producers and production companies who are actively looking to buy material or are looking to hire a screenwriter for a specific project. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. These leads run the gamut from production companies looking for a specific type of spec screenplay to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their ideas. There are producers looking for shorts, they're looking for features, there are producers looking for TV pilots and web series pilots. It's a huge array of different types of projects, and these leads are exclusive to our partner and SYS Select members. If you'd like to receive these leads, go to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Also, I recently set up a success stories page for people who have had success through the various SYS Select services. So if you want to check out what some other people who have tried our services are saying, go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/success. In the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing writer-director William Liu. William just finished production on his debut feature film called Comfort, which he wrote and directed. He's got a lot of practical advice for anyone planning on shooting their own film, so keep an eye out for that episode next week. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on something from today's interview with Anders. I thought it was a very interesting thing what he said about being a director, writer-director, and then watching other directors direct his screenplays. Since he's a director, he understands how hard it is to actually direct something and make the film as good as what you see in your head. And I really agree with this sentiment. It's so important to understand how your script is actually going to get translated into film. This is just going to help you as a writer, and it's going to help you help the director translate your film into the film that you see in your head. And really, the only way you can understand sort of this very mechanical, physical process is by going through it, by actually writing something and then getting it filmed. This is basically what I'm trying to do with my own feature film. I've seen a few of my scripts get produced at this stage in my career. I've got a bunch of produced credits, but I've always felt like they were a lot less than what was actually written. I always felt like the scripts were better than what the movies turned out with. And I know all writers probably think that. But what I'm trying to do with The Pinch is get out there, direct something myself, and see if I can make the movie as good as what I feel that I've written. With The Pinch, if nothing else, even if it turns out to be a terrible film, at the very least, I'll hopefully at least gain a little empathy for the directors who have directed some of my scripts. And this is why I recommend doing some shorts. In this day and age, you can do shorts for practically no money. And even if they aren't good, it will help you as a writer. Just write a scene or two, something that you can shoot in your own home. Get a couple of friends, even if they're not actors. If you have actor friends, all the better. But even if they're not actors, just get some friends who are outgoing and can perform on camera a little bit, and just shoot the scene, even if it means shooting it on your iPhone or whatever phone you have. Download some free editing software and just try and put something together. Again, there's very little downside to doing this. And I can almost guarantee, even if it turns out terrible and you don't go to any film festivals, I can almost guarantee that you'll become a better writer by actually going through this process, by actually seeing how things fit together and actually understanding sort of this physical process of where things go wrong and the potential problems that a director can have. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.